a sense of theft.
Once upon a time, a young woman named Zina lived opposite a baker's shop. Everyone in the village loved Zina, for she was kind and generous. She had a marvelous laugh and a beautiful voice. And in the evening when she sang, people would gather around her windows to listen. Wie ist der Geisele, wie ist du still, wie ist der Mädel, weh min hab lieb. Was ist der Geisele, was ist du still, was ist der Mädel, weh min hab lieb. But Zina was terribly poor, and to pay for her tiny house and her food, she cleaned people's homes and mended their clothes. The baker's name was Mordechai. Everyone loved Mordechai's cakes, his cookies, his breads, and his pies. Mordechai seemed to have a special touch with baked goods, but otherwise, he was a terrible man. He was greedy and unpleasant, and he never had a kind word to offer. And still people flocked to the bakery because once they had tasted even one of Mordechai's breads, they had to have more. Zina and Mordechai seldom spoke, but Zina loved the smells that wafted out of the shop across the street from her house. Every morning, just before dawn, while Mordechai was baking, Zina walked to her window and threw it wide open. She leaned out and inhaled the mouth-watering scents. Ah, so delicious! How I wish I could afford to buy Mordechai's breads and cakes. But alas, Zina could not afford such luxuries. One day, two women, Rachel and Sophie, were standing in the bakery waiting to purchase fresh challahs for their Sabbath meal, when suddenly Rachel burst out laughing. What's so funny? Mordechai asked grumpily. I was just thinking of poor sweet Zina. She says she doesn't need to eat your cakes and your pies. And why not? Demanded Mordechai. She feasts on the smells. So she says, Sophie said. What? She feasts on the smell of my baked goods? Why, for that she'll have to pay. And before Rachel or Sophie could say another word, Mordechai tore off his apron and stormed out of the shop. He rushed directly to the courthouse and into the judge's chambers. I have a case, he said to the startled judge. I demand you to call Zina to court. She owes me the money. She has stolen from me. And then he presented his case. The judge listened thoughtfully to Mordechai's tale. And then he sent the clerks to summon Zina. Tell her she must appear in court, and she must bring with her all her money, for the baker is charging her with theft of a smell. When the clerk told Zina of the charges, she wept. All the women of the village gathered around to comfort her. Nonsense! Utter nonsense! No one can steal a smell. The judge is mad even to consider such a case. And as word spread through the village of the case of Mordechai against Zina, the arguments began. Some said Mordechai was a greedy fool. Surely the judge would see that. But others whispered, Zina has indeed stolen. She ought to pay if she is feasting on the smells Mordechai makes. everyone was talking about the famous case of Mordecai the baker and Zina the thief of smells. And on the day the judge was to announce his verdict, the whole village gathered at the courthouse. Holding her bag of coins, Zina hurried up the courthouse steps and appeared before the judge. "I have brought all my money just as you asked," she said softly. The judge eyed her closely. "Zina, tell me this. Have you been smelling the baker's cakes and pies, cookies and breads?" Zina bowed her head. "I have. In the morning I open my windows and sniff all those wonderful scents. They rise up and float out the baker's window and through the air and into my window. And yes, I inhale." "And does this give you pleasure, Zina?" asked the judge. "It does. Yes, I confess it does." "And have you said to others that sometimes you feel almost full when you inhale those smells, Zina?" "I have. I told Rachel that sometimes I feel as if I've eaten a whole loaf when I smell that warm, buttery scent." "And tell me, Zina, what's in that bag you are carrying?" Zina looked down at her bag. "Why, this is all the money I have in the world. I've brought it just as you demanded, sir." The judge fell quiet, and the courtroom did too. It was so quiet and still in that room, it seemed as if no one even breathed. Everyone knew the judge liked to think in silence. Everyone knew he would need time to settle this most unusual case. The only sound in that courtroom was the occasional tinkling of the coins in Zina's bag. At long last the judge stood. "I have reached a verdict, Zina. I find you guilty as charged. You are guilty of stealing the baker's smells." The crowd gasped, and a tear dropped from Zina's eye as the judge went on. "Now walk to your accuser, Zina." Zina walked to Mordecai's side and blushed with shame. "And now," said the judge, "Zina, you will shake your bag." "Your Honor? I don't understand." The judge's voice boomed. "Shake the bag of coins! I order you!" Quaking with fear, Zina began to shake her bag, and those coins began to clink and rattle, and in the great, silent courthouse, the echoes of those tinkling coins filled the room. The judge turned to face Mordecai. "Baker, do you hear the sound of those coins, clinking and tinkling and jingling and jangling?" "Yes, I do indeed," Mordecai said. "Is that a lovely sound to you?" "Oh, yes, lovely indeed," he said as he imagined the feel of those coins in his hand. "Good, then," said the judge. "The case is closed. Zina stole a smell, and now she has repaid you with the sound of her money. All's fair. Zina, you are free to go home with your coins." The crowd applauded wildly, pleased to discover their judge was wise and fair.